and it is March 8th, another Monday morning, and hopefully we can get your week off to a good start with Teaching Fishing Coffee Hour. Good to see everybody. If you don't know, I'm Captain Lance Valentine. Good to see you all here. Boy, the weather has been amazing, right? A lot of guys getting out fishing. I see some fish being caught on Lake Erie. I see some fish being caught on Detroit River, St. Clair River. There you go. So we'll see. Like I said, I'm usually in show mode this time of year, and even though we don't have shows, I still have stuff to do. So guy asked me the other day, when are you going fishing? I said probably April 2nd, April 3rd. That kind of looks about where we're going to be able to get the boat picked up from Iowa, get it together, get it all set, and get it in the water. It just kind of is what it is, and I'm okay with that. First of all, I'm very jealous to watch to watch you guys do what you're doing. So it is really neat. But you know, I do what I do, and that's what I do. So, but I do have the Angler Quest here. So I'm not so sure if we go get the Polar Craft that might not be. Take an hour or two and throw a bunch of stuff in the Angler Quest and head down for a trip to Erie, or as soon as Saginaw Bay opens up, head down to Saginaw Bay or up to Saginaw Bay and get some early season trolling in. So I don't know, we'll see. My life is so full of fishing once I leave here, April 2nd, April 3rd, but it'd be nice to get out. Actually, does anybody know is there still a brown trout fishery in Tawas early? That used to always be our first trip of the season. When I was tournament fishing and wasn't guiding, usually we had our first tournament middle of April, Detroit River, and we try to get up to Tawas Bay late March, early April, as soon as the ice was gone. And we get up there and we troll stick baits for, the idea was to catch browns, but you catch browns and Lakers and kings and cohos and, walleye and big pike. That was just a fun trip. Usually my dad and brother would go for a weekend as soon as the ice was out. That was always a fun trip. Rusty says he explored. I saw this, and I want to talk about this for a second because I think this is really cool. Rusty says he explored their home lake yesterday while the lake is still drawn down. So I have a whole bunch of pictures and a whole bunch of notes. Holloway Reservoir is not too far from my home. Nice little inland lake here to fish. Excuse me. But they used to draw it down every winter, and I would walk around the shore of that lake and take pictures. And unfortunately, when I really had time to explore that lake and fish it, it was before we had handheld GPS. But I would take pictures and notes and draw, make drawings. They used to draw Holloway Reservoir down 7, 8, 9, 10 feet. So you could see all that shallow structure you were fishing. Where the rocks were, where the gravel was, in that 6, 7, 8 feet of water you want to fish in the spring, you could see all that with it drawn down. So I would go down when it got nice and frozen, and I would walk around the edge of the lake. And if you have a lake that does that, a body of water that you fish that does draw down, no better way to learn the lake, especially the shallow part of the lake that you're fishing, than take a walk. Right now, handheld GPSs, you can buy a handheld GPS for, I don't know, 100, 125, 130 bucks. Have a handheld GPS with you, digital cameras that make it easy to kind of, take a picture and kind of keep them on. I was using at that time, a film camera. So, and then handwritten notes. What a way to kind of figure out exactly where your structure is, how fish are going to use it, and where those key spots are in shallow water. Yeah, if you got a body of water that draws down, or you get a body of water that maybe you have a situation where, they're doing some work on a dam or doing whatever, and they draw it down, you got to get out there. You'd be amazed what your eyes can see that you really can't interpret with your sonar, as hard as you try. So, good job, Rusty. Good for you. Get out there, get some pictures, take some notes, hopefully take a GPS and figure out all those spots that nobody else knows about. So, good for you. Good idea. Plus, it's nice to get out right now, right? Good morning, Corey. Good morning, Rob Carnell. Jeff Howe. Good morning, Jeff. Larry Lee Schneider. Good morning, Larry. Larry had a birthday just the other day. Happy birthday, my friend. John says, good morning from Florida. He's missing the spring. Yeah, it is nice. Ryan Clark, coffee hour, the only reason to look forward to Monday morning. Something like that. That's good to hear. Nick Wigglesworth, good morning. Captain Kevin is with us from Lake Erie Charge, our good buddy Captain Kevin Swartz. I'm sure he's on his way, if not thinking about starting. He's going out to use his active target this morning. Good for him. I'm still waiting on mine, so somehow Captain Kevin rates above me. How'd you do that, Kevin? So he's going to go out and use his active target. Be curious to hear what he has to say about that. Tommy Cease is with us. Nice. Scotty Burr. Nice, Scott. Good to see you. Corey Brown says he did the walk around at McConaughey in Nebraska because in 3 to 4 foot of water, 1 foot rise or cutting rocks is a huge difference. Amen. Paul DeMarco. Hi, Paul. Bob Dunning. Hi, Bobby. How are you? All right. Good to see everybody. Good to see everybody. All right. So a couple things I wanted to kind of touch on real fast. I've got a few questions over the last week or so I want to answer. Number one, let's address the jig thing. Jigs are here. I think we got about 10,000 jigs in the other day. So I'm hoping today, if not today, tomorrow, all of our jigs, all of our sizes, all of our colors will be on the website, walleye101.com. So 1 ounce Fire Tiger, 1 ounce Lemon Lime, 3/4 ounce Fire Tiger, all the stuff that we're missing, that will be, those will be on the website ready to go. So our whole selection of jigs should be here. They're here. Just got to be packed. They should be on the website hopefully today. If not today, tomorrow. So you guys have been asking me about Fire Tiger and Lemon Lime and 1 ounce. They're here. We just got to get them packed and get them ready to go. So they should be on the website fairly quick. I know you guys are anxious. I know you guys are anxious. They're coming, and I appreciate it. Rods, we've got spinning rods. I'm going to tell you honestly, if you want one of our custom spinning rods, and I'm going to brag a little bit, the only rod, and this is where it gets frustrating for a guy like me, right? 15, 16 years ago, when we started talking about using short, stiff fishing rods, nobody had one, so we had to physically build one. And we didn't just build a 5.5 foot rod, right? We started with a company. We built the rod. They sent us 6 different options. We kind of took those 6 options and said, don't like this one, don't like this one, don't like this one. I like this one, but I like this one, but. And then they built us 3 more and said, okay, here's kind of, I was okay, don't like this one, and I like these 2. I like this one, but I like this one, but. And then they built us 2 more and said, okay, and we said, okay, that's the one. So it was a process to build the right 5.5 foot rod, and we actually made some changes after that. If you remember a couple years ago, I got tired of, if you remember the original Denali's that came out, we designed the blank. If you remember the original Denali's, they had a hump in the handle, and the reel seat screwed up in the front. So anytime you held the rod like you should, you had that hump at the back of your hand, and your finger was on the screws, the threads of the reel seat. That was terrible. So what we did is we took the reel seat and we actually, and this you can only get this on my rod. You can there is another Denali 5.5, but it's not this one. It's a different blank. It's a complete different handle design. So the only one that has this is the Lance Valentine Signature Series. So we turned the reel seat around. So now the threads are back here, so they're out of the way. Then we put a little piece of rubber up here, like a golf grip. So now when you hold the rod like you should, right, the back of your pinky against the front of the reel, hold it like that, now you've got that piece of rubber in your hand. You can get on the blank, and now it's nice and comfortable where your hand is. It's very, very thin rubber, almost like a golf grip. So when you see rods that are on the market nowadays, and I hate to do this, but sometimes you just get frustrated. The last time we changed this, we flipped the reel seat around, put the rubber on the handle, and we extended this part of the rod just a touch, this little back part. So now what happens, when you grab that rod, it instantly fishes nose down. And that's because of the extra length we put behind the reel. That's how you want to fish a jigging rod. You don't want your jigging rod sitting up here and doing this. You want it straight down with the rod tip just above the water and just barely lift it off the water. That makes it more efficient, keeps line off the water, keeps line out of the wind, and gets your rod tip as close to the water as you can to feel those small strikes. So this rod was built from a blank sheet of paper designed to do one thing. Now, once somebody is effective and once somebody is successful, it's very easy to come along and build a 5.5-foot rod and go there. Not the same thing. I'll go to my grave telling you, not the same thing. I guess it's kind of flattering to be imitated, but they didn't put the work in. St. Croix, Lamb of Glass, everybody else that's out there did not put the work in to build a rod. They copied a rod that was selling. You can do with that as you wish. I really, honestly don't care. But I think when somebody puts hours and hours and hours into something, it's better than someone that says, that's a good idea, I'm just going to knock one off. With a jigging rod, I will say this without hesitation, with a jigging rod, you do not want cork or EVA foam on the handle. Don't want it. Cork is the worst dampener of vibration that you can put on a rod. Cork is great on trolling rods. It's great on some other rods. It's terrible on a jigging rod. Okay? If you've got a cork handle up here, especially a cork handle that's big enough that you can't get up to the blank, you don't have a rod that's designed properly. And that's what happens when people just grab a rod and go, I'm going to build one that length, and we're going to go. So there you go. There's a little rod commercial that I don't get to do because we're at the shows. That's why I honestly will go to my grave, believing 100% that our rod is the best rod for the Detroit River. It was designed specifically to do one thing: vertical jig with 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce jigs. That's what it's designed for. Not designed to do anything else. And we started with a bunch of options, picked the best option, made some modifications to it since then, and I think we have the best rod on the market. Now, saying that, I know we're under 100 as far as stock goes. We've got, I think we got 100, 200 spinning rods and 200 casting rods on order. I will be honest with you, sitting here today, I don't know if those are going to get here before the season starts. It's just the way of the world right now. So if you're looking for a spinning rod, you're going to buy a spinning rod, you want to add another spinning rod, you need to get it, because when those, I think we got like 100 and some odd left. When those are gone, I don't know when I'm getting other ones. It's just a fact of this year. Same thing with jigs and plastics. What we've got right now, we have. I don't know. I don't know when our next order of jigs is coming. So there it is. So Mick says he fought with Akuma for years. Says I'm the right piece. Ain't that the truth? So I was lucky. We were able to work with a company that wanted to work with us, and then Denali came along and said, "Hey, we'd like you to work with us on this series of rods." So that was kind of very, very fortunate. But it's frustrating, and honestly, the whole jig world today is frustrating. When we first started talking about heavy jigs, there were no heavy jigs. If you wanted a 3/4 1 ounce jig, it was a big giant round ball. So we tried a few, and it's funny to see the jigs that I see on the market today, and I'm like, those don't work. We tried all those. We actually had the ability to go to a place, and I cannot tell you where we had a chance to go because I was sworn. I actually have an NDA that I couldn't tell. But we actually took jigs and actually put them inside a tunnel that actually acts like current. So we got a chance to see all of these jigs actually work and see what happened. So we started with a jig that we thought was going to be okay, and learned so much about jigs when we stuck them in this tube that it was amazing. That's why we ended up, when we built our thump jig from scratch, zero, blank sheet of paper, go, okay, well, what do we want this jig to do and how do we do it? Because the other ones that are on the market, the current molds that you can buy, the store is walleye101.com, yes. And Akuma's CMARs, as of right now, I think we've got a couple left, Steve. Again, like I told you guys last week, I made a post. I'm telling you from the bottom of my heart, you don't have to believe me if you don't want to. I'm telling you, if there is something that you want for fishing, that you're going to want to buy for fishing or for your boat, that you're going to want to buy in the next 18 months, you need to buy it now. Because it probably will not be around in the next 12 months. There is nothing in the distributor pipeline. Zero. Zero. Right? I've had multiple people ask me for Helix, Solix, Altera trolling motors. Don't have any in the pipeline. I deal with 4 of the biggest wholesale suppliers in the fishing industry. That's where I buy my stuff from. There's none. There's zero. 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 Reels are getting really, really, really hard to find. Rods are getting really, 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 really hard to find. I'm just telling you, if there's something you're going to want in the next 12 to 18 months, Lowrance stock is already starting to get really tough to get on their new Elite FSs. The active target transducer, they just don't, they can't get parts. Nobody's got enough, right? So if there's something you think you're going to need in the next year to year and a half, fishing, boating, you better get it, because there just isn't. It's just not around. It is what it is. We've had people sitting at home with extra money. We've had people that more people have gotten into fishing now that they had some time off last year, and inventory is hard to get. Parts are hard to get. Pieces are hard to get. It's hard to get people to go back to work. It just is what it is. Here we go. So, all right. So let's get back to talking about jigs. All right. So when we first started talking about heavy jigs back in 2000 and, I'm going to say 4, 5, 6, and really started talking about it and use them exclusively in 2007, 2008. It's a lot of things, Nick. Yeah, it's lack of workforce. People don't want to go back to work. There's a lot of stuff sitting on the shelf with that need one little part that they can't get, so they can't build anything. Microchips are getting hard to get. The materials, silicon, copper, tin, all the things we need to make that type of electronic stuff, can't get it. Or the price is so high, it's not worth getting. I'm telling you, if you need something for fishing, get it. And everybody's saying that. Mick was talking the other day about there's stuff he can't find for his car or his truck he's putting together. It just is what it is, right? Unfortunately, what that does is give first crack at stock to the big box stores and puts little guys in a situation. So anyway, let's go back to jigs. So we wanted to do a 3/4 ounce and a 1 ounce jig. So we looked at everything that was out there thinking, okay, there has to be something, right? So we tried. So there's a jig on the market that you see that's kind of, cut in the front and has, 45-degree angle sides. And I was just looking through my stuff. I've got a gazillion of them because it was a mold that I used to make my jigs for me when I was fishing 1/8 ounce, 3/4 or 3/8, half. It was one of my favorite molds. They were easy. The jigs were easy to get. And I painted my own, and I got a gazillion of them. Well, when we went down to the place we went to and we put that jig inside the current, what happens is the front is so flush and so high, right? It looks like it would go through the water. What happens is that when that water hits that flush front on that jig, right, that goes like this, that jig is kind of designed like that from the top. When the water hits that front, it goes around the jig, and what it does is it actually creates low pressure on the side of the jig. How does an airplane get lift, right? An airplane wing goes through the air hits it, and it gets low pressure that actually lifts it. So what happens with that jig with the blunt front and the 45-degree angle sides, water hits it, it gets low pressure on the side of the jig, and it actually lifts the jig up a little bit. The jig does not dive down, it actually lifts a little bit. Okay, so that was pretty easy. So then we found a jig that was a little bit longer and skinnier. Kind of looked like, kind of a little bit longer than this one is now, and it's a little bit skinnier. It was skinnier top to bottom, and it had little ridges on the side. Like, okay, that's going to cut through the water pretty good. Put it in the water. Problem is, when you lifted it, if you dropped it without pressure, if you drop that jig on a slack line, because it was so long and skinny, and it had these little ridges on the side, and this jig is still out there, had that little ridges on the side, the jig would actually start to spin, even with a tail on it. Those wings wanted to catch the water. Once those edges on the side caught the water, they would start to spin. It became basically an airplane jig. Good jig for maybe jigging and ice fishing. Not a great jig for the river. There's a jig on the market called a minnow jig, and you've seen them look like a minnow. They got a little turned up nose, right? The front kind of turns up and looks like lips, right? Terrible in the current. That jig is actually designed to be cast out, pulled behind the boat. Then if you put a little bit of pressure on it, it actually takes that jig on those lips. If you pull some pressure on it, it actually takes that jig and rolls it up. So it actually fishes hook up with that lip on the bottom of the lake. Great for casting, great for snap jigging or trolling, terrible for vertical jigging. Again, 100 zillion of these jigs on the market. Y'all know round ball jigs are terrible, right? So we started thinking, we sat down with a person to design our jigs, and we kind of worked with a little bit of everything. So we went through the process, and what we found out was round. And again, this is kind of funny when you talk to engineers. I didn't do this. People a lot smarter than me built this jig. So one of the things they talked about was what is the most efficient shape that man has built to go through the water without moving a lot of water. Somebody said submarine. Perfect. Submarines are round in the front. So we went back to the test and we basically built a round nose. So that kind of slides through the water. Now, when the water goes around that round nose, the water stays on the side of the jig as opposed to a sharp and an angle that actually sends that water away from it and creates low pressure. Around, it actually goes on the jig. So, okay, we're on the right way. We got the water on there. Now what do? Well, the submarine came back into play. How does a submarine dive? Well, it takes its diving planes and does this. Okay, so we started with a whole bunch of lead on the back and the bottom of the jig. So now when the water hits, it goes over, it hits these little bulbs or cheeks on the back of the jig, and it actually forces this jig, so it's hanging vertical. Once it gets in the current, this jig actually does this. So now the water is actually, the way the jig is designed, is actually forcing the jig to the bottom. So it fishes heavier than it actually is. And the beauty of that is when it hits the bottom, it doesn't hit bottom like this, it hits bottom like this. So you guys who fished it, look at where all the paint comes off. That's because this jig is designed on purpose from the start, from scratch, like no other jig on the market that has just a mold and go, oh, there's some jigs. We took the time to get this right, so now it actually fishes this way. Hook off the bottom, so now you've got a better chance of getting hooked and less chance of getting snagged. And the beauty is there are times you want that jig to lay on the bottom. So now when you hit the bottom and let that jig lay, it now lays horizontal on the bottom. It doesn't roll over flat like the other jigs do. Huge advantages to tackle that was designed on purpose to do something. Okay? Don't be fooled just because somebody says river jig or walleye jig or whatever they call it. Don't be fooled, right? And I try not to let it bother me. It's one of the reasons I hate not having the shows, because you guys have known, if you guys have seen us, if you've bought our stuff, I get to tell that story on the tank. I don't get a chance to tell that story. I haven't had a chance to tell that story through the internet. It just kind of frustrates me. So we spent almost $6,000 getting molds built to actually get this jig right. Then a couple of years later, it was right. We thought, well, what can we do to make it better? We actually moved the line tie a little bit forward, and now that actually gives it actually really accentuated and enhanced the downward dive of that jig. So while everybody else's jig on the market is not designed for heavy current, they create issues if the jig either spins or actually lifts. We actually built a jig from the start with engineers on purpose that actually cuts the current, uses the shape of the jig and the lead to actually push it down, make it fish heavier, and make it land on the bottom in heavy current, nose down, hook up. Only jig on the market that does that. It's one of the reasons two things happen. We have big collars on our jigs, right? Our jig collars are very thick. That's on purpose, okay? We do that because if we don't make a big collar and we have that, if we need to use that extra weight to make a 1 ounce or 3/4 ounce jig, it changes the shape of the head. And then we lose all the properties of the head. The other thing we do is we don't make anything smaller than a 5/8, because if you don't have enough mass you can't get that shape. So for us to do a half-ounce jig, it would just be a half-ounce jig. So we don't do anything smaller than 5/8 because we don't have enough mass to actually build the shape that actually makes the jig act the way it acts. So there's your jig lesson for today. I'm going to talk about jig hooks a little bit. So I guess today's going to be a jig day. I'm going to talk about jig hooks a little bit. Be careful. Two things with jig hooks. Number one, be careful. People ask me all the time, why do you use a smaller hook? Why don't you use sickle hooks? We tried sickle hooks. We try one or two things every year. And, one of them is usually something that everybody's doing. We're like, why are we not doing that? And something else we want to try. We tried sickle hooks. I hated them. I can't tell you how many jigs I threw away because the sickle hooks, once that point on a sickle hook rolls over, it's done. You can't bring them back. They're very, very hard to sharpen. You just can't get them back. They might be sharp, they might be sticky, but they're not sticky sharp for a long time. They definitely roll over a lot easier than thicker point jig hooks do. And then I wasn't a big fan of the bend. We had a lot of failure. And again, we're fishing 10 hours a day, every day. Lots of fish, lots of pliers. We got failure on the sickle hook where that kind of bend was manufactured. That was a failure point, pretty consistent. The other thing I want to talk to you about, again, that I didn't know until we started talking to an engineer about jigs, is jig size. So a lot of guys like, I know your hook's too small. It's not a wide enough gap. Contraire. So here's how the science works. The physics of jig fishing works. You're going to put pressure on a jig by pulling. So here's how they test it. If you take a jig and put it straight up, you're going to pull this way. So the line of pull is straight up this way. Your hook is pulling on a second parallel line, right? So there's the pull of your jig, there's the pull of your hook. There's two parallel lines. Here's what I'm going to get you guys. Here's what you don't understand if you're not paying attention or don't understand the physics. A line of pull, a line of hook point. The closer those two lines are together, the more of this energy gets transferred to that hook point. So if I have a hook like ours that's close to the shank of the jig, and I pull 10 pounds of pressure, I get about 8.5 pounds of pressure at the point. If I take a big wide gap hook, or a sickle style hook, or something with a wider gap, and the further that point is away from the jig, if I put 10 pounds of pressure here, I may only get 4.5, or 5 pounds of pressure at the point. The closer the point is, the closer that parallel line the point's on is to the parallel line of the pull, the more this pressure force gets transferred into the hook point. And remember, in vertical jig fishing, we're not making big, long hook sets, right? What are we doing? Snap. That's all we're doing. We need instantly all of that force from the pull to be transferred to the hook point. That's why we use smaller gap hooks. More of the energy on the pull is transferred to the point of the hook. That's on purpose. I've got gallons of jigs back there that we tried, different hooks, bigger hooks, thicker hooks, thinner hooks, sickle hooks. They just didn't work. When you're on the water every day, and you actually are testing this stuff, it doesn't work. So we built the jig that I wanted for me, that I felt comfortable having in my boat with my customers. That's what we built. So there you go. Just wanted to kind of give that little conversation, have that little conversation about jigs. So it is that time of year. Just wanted to let you guys know that there's a reason we did the ride that we do, the reason we were first, the reason we do the jig design that we do, the reason we were first. I did an interview not too long ago with someone that says, how do you feel, actually just about a week ago, someone who's been around this part of the world said, how does it feel that everybody laughed at you 15 years ago? And this is a guy who's been around the show world. He goes, I remember, and he goes, I heard the whispers. He goes, and I talked to the people. He says, 15 years ago, everybody said you were nuts. Short, stiff fishing rods, tied direct to braided line, don't use live bait, fish big jigs. He goes, the people, what they were saying behind your back, he says, it was amazing. He goes, how do you feel now that everybody's imitating your rods? Everybody's making a 3/4 ounce, 1 ounce jig. everybody's fishing with plastics and not bait. I just, well, I kind of feel pretty good. But it just sometimes the people that put the work in, um, people come along and just copy and just go, well, I got a 1 ounce jig. Yeah, you do, but it's not designed to fish in heavy current. So just be careful. Do what you want to do. I'm not, obviously I want you to buy our stuff. No, let me back up. Actually, I know from experiment and time on the water and busting my ass being on the water and testing, I know that our stuff is better than anything else out there. I know for a fact, playing with it, if you put cork on a jigging rod, you have taken about half of the transfer of a bite from the rod tip line to your hand with a cork handle. Done. Half of it gone. 50% of your feel instantly gone. And I guarantee if a company cuts corners and does cork on a handle, they cut corners somewhere else on a blank or a design. They just took a blank that was there and said, oh, let's make it 5.5 foot to make everybody happy. It's just the way it is. We designed everything we have here, everything we did, we designed from scratch, right? It's the reason we sell worms. We knew that our jig collar was bigger than everybody else's jig collar. We knew by practice that a wind out worm on this collar is going to split. About 1 out of every 3 you put on instantly splits. After about 3 fish, they split. You got to have a worm, so we built our worm. I didn't know I was going to go this way. I didn't bring any. But our worms are a little bit longer on purpose, and you pinch off the extra worm above the sex collar, and now you got that big, heavy barrel of plastic that goes over this collar, doesn't split, and hangs on. And I'll tell you guys, with our worm, you can catch 25, 30, 35, 40 fish before you got to replace it. Stop buying thin, soft worms. When you get to the end of the day and you've got 40 worms on the floor of your boat, that's a badly designed worm. Your worm should stay on your jig 12, 15, 20, 25 fish. If that's not the plastic you're working with, you got the wrong plastic. I'll just leave it at that. Same thing we did our disc worm. We put a big ball on the head. So now that can go over the collar and hang on. Okay? Just do what you want to do. I'm okay with that. But there is somebody who took the time and built all of this from scratch with research, with on-the-water research, with scientists in a lab, seeing how current affects a jig. There's somebody that did that. That's why I have my name on it. The Lance Valentine Signature Series. It has nothing to do with something you can buy off a mold and anybody can make in their basement. That's not the jig that we sell. Okay? All right, there we go. End of discussion on jigs. All right, so Ed from M65, so he just tried to place a $5,000 order from a supplier, lucky to get $1,500. It's bad. Yeah, it's brutal. So anyway, Ray says, do you use a stinger hook? I use a stinger hook on all my plastics. Anytime I put a jig in the river, it has a stinger hook on it. The stinger hook that we use is that slide stinger, so it actually goes over the jig hook. And then the biggest thing that we do, again, that we kind of started, we let the stinger hook hang. We don't put anything. Let it hang. Now it's the lightest part of the whole presentation. It's easier for that fish to get that stinger hook in his mouth. So there you go. And again, I can remember when we started stinger hook fishing, everybody had short wire stinger hooks, and a friend of mine pulled me aside and said, I got this really cool deal, and I can prove it in 2001. Actually, I take it back, 2002. In the springtime, there was an article in Fisherman that talked about nothing except stinger hooks, and our design for the slip stinger hook, where the stinger hook goes on, you can pull it, open it up, take it off, and put it back on over the jig hook, is in Fisherman. I think the April issue in 2002. It's the first time anybody saw that slip stinger hook. First time anybody saw it. First time anybody knew it existed other than us and a few of our friends that we had shared it with on the Michigan Walleye Tour. And one of our friends that manufactures them now actually went the next route, which is add the collar, which has been amazing because now you have to sit and tie the loop knot. But we brought that to the Detroit River. That slip stinger hook. So it is what it is. Yes, I get frustrated. Yes, I get a little angry sometimes. As angry as I can get. But buy the right stuff, guys. Buy the right stuff. And it's not, I'm telling you, I don't want to piss anybody off. I'm sure I'm going to. And I guess whatever. The right stuff is not a jig mold that's been around for 40 years that somebody makes a jig and goes, there, it's 1 ounce. That's not a river jig. It's a big jig. It's a 1 ounce jig. It's better than a round ball without question, but it's not the jig that's designed to fish in the river. Okay? All right. Paul DeMarco says, Lance, your latest Detroit River video, you spoke of the CMAP hardness add-on. Is that the Genesis Edge? Yes, the CMAP Edge, yes. And do I need to buy a new Genesis chip? You do not need a Genesis chip. You can buy this. You can buy the CMAP. I'm going to have to get back to you, Paul, because that has just changed. Let me work on that, and I'm going to do something. I want to get Chris McCulley in here and talk about that mapping. So that's something that I definitely want to do. So we will address that in detail when we have a chance. Steve says, if I have a rod that says 1/4 to 5/8 medium action with a fast tip, 5/8 would be the max. Usually, Stevie, those ratings on a rod are for casting, right? You put too heavy of a torque on a rod and it's bending as it loads up to cast. Sometimes you can break it. But you got a rod that's rated up to 5/8 or half. You can definitely vertical jig a 1 ounce jig, but it's going to not have the backbone. Even though it's a fast tip, it's not going to have the backbone to be able to lift that jig and not have the rod tip bend. And that's the whole point. When you lift the jig off the bottom, you don't want the rod tip to bend. Because when a rod tip bends, you lose all your sensitivity. So when you pick that rod up and you see that rod tip bend when you pick the jig up, that's bad. You've lost touch with that jig. That rod tip needs to be stiff and stay straight when you lift the jig. That's how you know you've got the right fishing rod. All right. Corey says, good jigs are designed to do specific things. That's, you know my feelings on jigs. Ray says, is it half the length of the worm like the disc worm? The actual worm, you just need to cut off a little bit above the sex collar. Actually makes it the same size as the traditional worm. Disc worm is a touch longer and a little bit thicker, but again, a disc worm, you don't have to do anything with it. It has that big ball on the end to make it stay on the plastics pretty good. Lauren says, congratulations on your appointment to the NPA board. Thank you, sir. That's been kind of exciting. Paul Phillips says, so true, Orient ringworms from Walleye 101, killer proven. Thank you, buddy. Rob says passion, not anger. Yeah, and I think that's it. We worked long and hard to do this right, and people are just kind of look at whatever. It is what it is. I just know that when I see something that is designed specifically to do something, I don't buy something that somebody knocked off 3 generations later, right? It's very easy to see something that works and go, okay, we're going to build that now. Okay, but it's not the same. I guarantee you, and there's somebody, Brian Ross, St. Croix, Lamaglass, Jason Mitchell, G. Loomis, and others. I recently purchased a Denali. The last 4 jigging trips this year, I found myself reaching for the Denali off the shelf. I wasn't sure, thought it was too stiff. But once I dropped 1 ounce weight down 30 feet and started feeling the bottom, I realized it's absolutely his favorite rod now. There you go. So I have we sell about 400 to 600 rods. Let's call it 450 rods a year. We've been doing that since we started with Jim Grant back in 2006, I think. I'm going to tell you, I've probably gotten a dozen back. Guys like just can't. And the problem, if you fish it you can't go out one day with your favorite rod and go, I'm going to try this Denali and jig for an hour and go, I don't like it. That's not going to work. All right, you can't do that. Take your other rods out of the boat, fish that Denali for 2 full days. I guarantee you, 99.9% of the guys are never ever going to go back to the other rod. So, all right, Paul. Yeah, we'll work on it. I'll get a hold of Chris and we'll work on it. Jose got the boat out of Sterling. Nice, 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 nice. John's going to work. Have a good day, Johnny. Have a good day. All right, so there we go. I went on my rant. I haven't ranted in a while. sorry to do that, but it just we spent so much time and money and energy and effort to build something right. Look at some of you guys were around. Maybe not too many now, but some of you guys were around when we started selling tackle, and that's the last thing I wanted to do. The last thing I wanted to do was be a tackle salesman. I didn't want one at all. Didn't want any of it at all, ever. But we were forced to because the stuff that we needed, nobody made. And we tried the stuff that was on the market, and it wasn't any good. There were 1-ounce jigs that weren't round. They weren't any good. They exist today. They're being sold today. They're being advertised today. They're being promoted on the internet today. Same jig we first tried and went, this is terrible. So we got into building jigs. Couldn't find the right rod. Decided to build a rod. Couldn't find the right plastics that we wanted, the right sizes, the right shapes, and the right color. Went to a company and had some plastics built, and now you see stuff that we've done. Everybody's got it, which I get. I get that, right? Nobody had a slip stinger. Stinger hooks were 2 inches long. They were wire and they hooked to your jig. Oh, here comes a slip stinger hook. Okay, nobody had a slip stinger hook. Now everybody's, buying slip stinger hooks or making slip stinger hooks, right? When you get ripped off by a major manufacturer and they try to put it in their packaging, I feel good about that. But it is. It's frustrating because I know that our stuff works. I know our stuff works. I know it works. I know it works. I know it works. And I know it works better. For the guys that aren't on the river 50 days a year, I know our stuff works better. If you're on the river 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year and you need to maximize your time, I guarantee you our rods, our jigs, our plastics, our stingers will catch you more fish than anything else on the market. If you buy it and it doesn't, send it back. I'll give you your money back. It's that simple. We designed it on purpose with a reason for guys who don't fish a lot to be able to go out and catch a ton of fish. So there you go. Denny says, why such small eyes on the Denali rod? Well, okay, here we go. Let's talk about rod design. So, guides are actually integral to the quality of the rod and the way the rod works. More guides means a better rod. That's a simple statement I can make, and that goes for any fishing rod you're going to buy. More guides, the better. So what happens is you have a lot of guides, right? Two things. The small guides do keep the rod, line closer to the rod. The other thing is it allows you to use the whole blank. So when I bend the rod, there is not a flat spot. The line is actually moving in the same arc as the rod. That allows you to use the whole pressure of the rod to fight the fish without putting extra stress on your fishing line. Okay? If you've got a rod, like the ones that I see on the market now, that take a 5.5 foot rod and have 5 guides on them, when you load that rod up, okay, that line's going to hit this guide, and it's going to make a 90-degree turn at each one. So the rod is bending in an arc, the line is going in a straight line. That means there's extra pressure on the line on the bottom of this guide and extra pressure on the line on the bottom of the next guide. And you're not using the whole rod to fight the fish because your line isn't using the whole rod. That's why we put a bunch of guides on there. If you're going to put a bunch of guides to keep the weight down, you have to use small guides. It's that simple. If I use regular sized guides all the way up here, this rod would weigh twice as much. So it was a function of we want the rod to work. And I guarantee you, go to a store, take everybody else's 5.5 foot. We have more guides than most people's 7-foot rod does. And that allows that line. The more that line follows the arc of the rod, the more pressure you can put on the fish, the more of the rods you're using to fight the fish and the less stress there is on your line when you do it. It's basic rod design. Yeah, it costs a little bit more. It takes a little bit longer. The guides are a little bit smaller. I get that. But you want the rod to function properly. That's the deal. Fastest way for manufacturers to cut corners. Cork handles, big guides, less guides. Because the more guides you put, the more time the rod spends in the wrapping machine. The more time it spends in the wrapping machine, the less you can make in an hour. The less you make in an hour, the less money you make. That's why most manufacturers don't do it. It's that simple. Guides on the rod allow you to transfer all of the fish fighting ability, power of the rod to the tip of the lure and allow you to do it without stress on the line. So there you go. Yes, Aaron, it's a Denali, but it's our Denali. It's a Myriad, but it's the Lance Valentine signature series. You can't buy it in any store. The only place you can buy it is on our website, walleye101.com. It's the only place you can buy that rod. There are Denalis on the market that are 5.5 foot, but they are not that rod. The ones that are made for manufacture for wholesale for every other store to buy, it's not the same rod. 100% not the same rod. So that rod right there that's the one that we designed. That's ours. No one else can buy that except us. You can get it on our website at walleye101.com. Dan's is talking about straight eyelets and not spiral wrap. We tried spiral wrap stuff. For whatever reason, that's become a big deal. Whatever, I've been around. I've been studying fishing since I was 10 years old, and I've seen gimmicks come and go. I think spiral wrap is one of those. There are some advantages if you're putting a lot of torque on a casting rod, where the line stays on the top. But again, if you put enough guides on your rod, and our casting rods has that many guides, if you put enough guides on a casting rod, okay, the line doesn't roll over. And that's what spiral's for, is when you lift a casting rod, the line goes out and sometimes it'll fall off the side of the rod. So the spiral lets the line, if you put enough guides on the top of your rod, you don't need to spiral wrap it. It's not that hard. So spiral wrapping in some situations can give you better casting because of the way the line comes off, but I don't think it's the time, the energy, and the money to get it right. It's not worth it. If you put enough guide, you had 2 more guides to the top of your casting rods that you use now. You don't need to spiral wrap it. The line stays on the top and does just that. It uses the whole rod to fight it. We did it. I'm telling you, we've done it. We've done big hooks. We've done sickle hooks. We've done every jig design you could think of. We either tried or at least tested. We tried every rod. We did it. We've done it all, guys. We've had cork handles. We've had foam handles. We've done it. There's a reason our stuff is different than everybody else's, because we actually put the work in. We didn't just go, oh, Lance is selling a bunch of 5.5 footers. Let's put it in our line now, like everybody else did. It's not what we did. It's what it is. Can I buy it? Yeah, absolutely, Rob. Go to the walleye101.com. Go to the Detroit River page. I'm going to put a link up here right now. Yeah, absolutely. You can buy just a rod. You don't have to buy the combo. We do the combo. So what we're doing right now is the rods are traditionally $129.99. We've got them on sale for $119. So we're giving you $10 off. That was our show price. And then we have a combo where the rod starts at $99 if you add a reel and some fishing line. So and that was our show special. So we're running all of our show specials online right now. So here is this is the rods and the combos. So paste. So there's the page. If you go to that page right there, and then in the upper left-hand corner, as soon as you get to that page, it's just the rod. And if you scroll down in the bottom right-hand corner, is the rod, reel, and line combo. So those are available. Rob says his combo's coming. He's excited now. Good. I like that. I like that. So, yes, you can buy just a rod, Robbie. So, Kevin just ordered. Thank you, Kevin. Matt Peterson, my good friend, says, I believed in you 20 years ago. People will always talk behind your back. I appreciate that, Matt. Matt's been a good friend of mine for a long time. Corey says, now for casting with a rod, I've always heard bigger. Yeah, absolutely. Look at this rod was designed to vertical jig. That's it. It wasn't designed for casting jigs, although it's the same rod I use. You can see the jig I had on it there. I use it for casting jigs in shallow water. I use it for weed fishing with jigs. I don't use, like when I use Roy's swim jigs, which we'll talk about later in the year, and why his jig is designed the way it's designed to be the right design for swim jig fishing. For everything that you do, for every type of jig fishing you do, there is a jig designed specifically to do it. Stop buying horseshit, knockoff, cheap, do-it mold basement jigs. They are not the best jigs for what you do. There's a reason when Roy makes his jigs for swim baits, there's a reason the eye is where it is. There's a reason the weight is balanced the way it is. There's a reason. It's designed to cast baits, keep them off the bottom, and allow you to drag baits across the bottom or pull baits, plastic baits, to the water like a crankbait. Without getting hung up in the weeds, without getting hung up in the rocks. There's a reason that jig's designed that way. You can't just go buy cast. That's not how it works, right? And the jigs that we designed for the Detroit River are crap anywhere but heavy current. I would not cast this jig. I would not use this jig in the weeds. I would not use this jig in the wood. Actually, when we cast in the Detroit River, I use a different jig. This jig is designed to be vertically fished in current. That's it. End of discussion. If you're not doing that, leave them home. There are lots of other jigs designed to be cast through the weeds, right? A weed weasel jig, a stand-up fireball, jigs with line ties on the nose. These are designed to be cast into wood, cast into weeds, cast on the bottom, and drug along the bottom. These jigs would suck in the river, regardless of what size they were. Jig fishing is an art, and just buying a horseshit jig that says, here's a jig, ain't gonna work, guys. Now again, I'm gonna go back to what I always say about what I say about fishing. The problem is we live in a part of the world where you can do everything wrong and still catch fish. Just a fact. You've heard me say it before. We don't have fishing here in this part of the world, the east part of the Great Lakes. We don't have fishing. We have varying degrees of catching. You can do everything wrong and still catch them. And that sucks, because what happens is guys don't buy the right stuff because they can buy the wrong stuff and do it wrong and still catch them. Nobody tunes their crankbaits, so you can go to Lake Erie or Saginaw Bay, drive in a straight line for 4 miles and have 20. Nobody cares about precision trolling because you can drive 4 miles with 20 lines behind your boat on Lake Erie or Saginaw Bay and catch 20. Nobody cares about the right jig because you can go to Detroit River, there's a gazillion fish, you're going to hit one on the nose by accident and start to catch a few. That's the problem we have here. And I'm convinced of 90% of the guys that fish the Great Lakes, Detroit River, Saginaw Bay down to Lake Erie, 90% of those guys that do that had to fish, had to go to Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, and fish. We'd have a lot less fishermen. I'm glad it's easy here. Our guys like it. It's nice. I've traveled the country and fished hard stuff. It's a lot funner to fish when it's easy. But sometimes easy means you can do it wrong and still catch fish, because the fish are just so plentiful and so aggressive sometimes. Where it comes in is, like I've always told you about paying attention. If you've followed me for 2 weeks or 25 years I've been doing this, when I talk about details like that, I always say it doesn't matter when the fish are biting. It matters when the fish aren't. So when everybody else has got 2, if you do it right, you're going to have 10. When everybody's got 30, you're going to have 30, or have caught 60 because you did the right thing even better. Where the details come in, the right rod, the right line, the right jig, the right plastic, the right depth, the right speed, using a fish hawk. When all those little things come together, is when everybody else has got 2 or 3, you've still got 12, 15, or 20. That's the difference. So why not use all that information, all that detail every time, and know that you're maximizing your catch? Just my 2 cents. Paul DeMarco, Lance, do you have a leader on the? Yeah, so I had a leader actually on the one I just had. That's one I still tied direct on the river. I just grabbed that one. That one was actually set up for jigging in the weeds, and I run usually depending on where I'm fishing. If I'm on Saginaw Bay or Lake Erie, I don't worry about it. This rod actually came from Houghton Lake. So when I'm on a place like Houghton Lake where there are a lot of pike, I'll run about a 16-pound fluorocarbon leader to my jig just because it helps me with bite-offs. If I tie direct, you're casting those weeds, and you get a little 18-inch pike, next thing you know, your jig is gone. So, Paul, yes, good catch. I do not use a leader on the Detroit River. That's another story for another day. I don't use a leader. I don't think you need to. But when I'm casting jigs into weeds where there's a lot of pike, I'll run a 16 or 20-pound fluorocarbon leader just so I can keep my jig on my line a little longer, a little bit longer. I don't think leaders make a difference on how many fish you're going to catch. I really don't. I think personally, I think you'll catch more fish tied direct because you have better feel. So I tie direct all the time, other than that one situation when I'm casting jigs in the weeds and I'm in a spot where there's a lot. And I usually don't do this until I get bit off 3 or 4 times. Then I'll put a leader on. This rod actually came from Houghton Lake. That rod was actually a rod we'd used up at Houghton Lake last or 2 summers ago. So that's why it has that leader on it. So. New Denali is the best. There's definitely a difference in weight distribution. Makes it easier to jig. Keeps the rod tip down towards water. Yeah. So if you walk into a store and grab a 5.5-foot Denali Myriad and then buy a Lance Valentine 5.5-foot Denali, different rod. They're not the same rod. So, Nick, have a great day. Roy says lots of time and money in design. I'm sure he's making that as a general statement, and I know for a fact he's making it as a specific statement to why he makes his jigs the way that he does. That's why I have a ton of respect for guys like Roy who start from scratch and build something, right? Guys who can make their own molds, guys who can make their changes. It's just, it's better. It's better. This is what it is. Kevin Kasich says still use the Fenwick AVs. Best rod I've used other than the Denali is that Fenwick AV. We tried really hard, Kevin, to get them to make us a 5.5, and they wouldn't do it. That Fenwick AV, I still got mine. I've got a couple 6-footers, 6-foot medium heavies. I've got a couple 7-footers that I use for live bait rigging. I still love those Fenwicks. Actually, the blank design and the taper of the blank on our Denali was actually copied from the Fenwick AV because I liked the taper of the blank. Matt says we did a lot of research and design on river rattle jigs as well. No production mold. All right, Matt makes a jig really close to ours in shape as far as being able to stay on the bottom. He puts a rattle in it. And again, that's it is what it is. Denny says, thanks for the jigging rod explanation. I did not know cork was a vibration dampener or even the proper way to hold the rod. Yeah, that's the big thing. If if I'm going to leave you with this. If you have the reel in your hand when you're jig fishing, right? If you hold it like you do when you're casting, if you have the reel in your hand, I guarantee you're missing half of your bites. Because you put that reel in your hand, it deadens the rod. You can't feel what's coming. Take your hand, take your pinky finger, back of your pinky against it. So now you're going to come up here, and what I do is I grab the line with my middle finger and the blank with my index finger and fish down. So now that reel is completely out of the equation. Completely out of the equation. All the reel's doing is balancing the rod, and the rod does it itself with the extra little bit of length we added to the end. It fishes down, I keep the rod tip down, and I just slowly lift the rod tip. I don't lift it like this. I just slowly lift the rod tip. Just like that. Finger on the line to feel anything on the line. Finger on the blank to feel anything. Reel's out of the equation. Here we go. We're fishing. Okay? I tell you what, whatever rods you use, you do that this year. take the reel out of your hand, come forward to the reel, put your finger on the blank, you're going to catch more fish this year. I don't care what rod you use, you're going to catch more fish. So anyway, all right, that's not what I wanted to do today. I apologize for getting fired up. That is not what I really wanted to do today, but hey, it is what it is, right? It's jigging season, and that's something I wanted you guys to know. It may sound like sour grapes. It's not, because again, do what you do. I'm okay with that. I just think people, and again, this is a story that we get to tell hundreds of times during show season, right? We're on the tank 10 to 12 times a weekend in Detroit. We're on the tank 10 to 12 times a weekend. Grand Rapids, we tell this story. We're in our booth. We get a chance. Why are your jigs better? Why is your rod better? We get a chance to tell the story over and over and over again to lots of people. With last year gone, show season gone this year, we just don't get a chance to tell the story. And I think it's an important story that needs to be told. There's a reason that what we do is what we do. I don't want to be, I do not want to be in the jig selling business. Never did. Paul DeMarco was around. Kevin was around when I first started Walleye 101. I did not want to be in the tackle business. That's why you don't see a lot of stuff on our site anymore, right? Don't sell crawler harnesses. I don't want to get in a situation where either I have to tie crawler harnesses or I have to make sure somebody's got crawler harnesses tied. Everybody in the world should be able to tie crawler harnesses. Right? Maybe one day we need to come here and show you how to tie crawler harnesses. You should be able to tie a crawler harness in about 45 seconds to a minute. Not that hard. You shouldn't buy tied harnesses. There's no reason to spend $1 on tied harnesses. You can buy enough stuff to tie all the harnesses you're going to use the rest of your life for $50. All right? No reason for anybody to ever buy a harness. They're simple. They're easy. You can do them on the boat. Away you go. But there is a reason jigs are designed specifically. Rods designed specifically. Is what it is. So we took the time, the money, and the effort, and a lot of days of fishing that I wasted trying something that I knew wasn't going to work. We had to prove it didn't work, and we did that a lot. And then we just said, no, that doesn't work. What's our next step? And that's where we were. That jig right there. If you remember what we used to sell and what we used to do, that jig right there that I just showed you was about 24 months in the making. We knew we wanted it, but it just took us that long to get it right. And in the meantime, we had another alternative that was okay, but we wanted to get it right. And that's why it took us about 2 years and about $6,000 to get it right. So, yes, I'm passionate about this because this is my baby. So, anyway. All right, let's wrap it up. 9 o'clock at Leo's here in Burton on Court Street. I will be at breakfast. If anybody wants to, good idea, Ramon. Maybe that'll be my next, because I would like a 7-foot rod for casting jigs and doing some other stuff too. So that might be a good option for our next rod design. I'll be at breakfast at 9 o'clock at Leo's here in Burton. If you want to just come and hang out, we'd love to have you. Anybody want to come over? You're more than welcome. Lots of stuff going on that needs to get done, and yesterday was one of those days. What's one thing we can do today to make this better? We got some stuff done yesterday. That's in honor of our good friend Duncan. So again, today, if there's something that's wearing on you, something you got to get done, something you don't want to do, something that's maybe a problem right now, find one thing you can do today to make it better. Continue to reach out. I know we're getting back to quote unquote normal. I know we're a chance to see people, say hi, we're having breakfast. But there's still people who are, frustrated, scared, don't want to go out, whatever the case may be. If you have a friend who you know is struggling, reach out and say, hi, I'm thinking of you. That goes a long way. And then lastly, as we always like to end our days, be kind. Right? Just be kind. The world's a mean place, unfortunately. We need places that we can be kind. We need places we can have conversations like this and people not get offended. And somebody have an opinion, somebody have a different opinion, and have a chance to talk about it and still leave here friends and let everybody be passionate about what they believe. Just be kind. Find a way to be kind. Help somebody. Buy the guy behind you in line a coffee this morning. Help somebody open a door. Just be kind. Be kind. I don't think it's a bad thing if when you're gone, someone says, or so, when someone talks about you, if they say you're too nice. I don't think that's a bad thing. There you go. All right, guys, have a great day. Have a great week. Thank you for joining us. Tomorrow on Teaching Fishing, we've got a short little 3.5-minute little conversation about what's coming up this month on Teaching Fishing Anglers Club. So if you are part of the Anglers Club, I saw that, Randy, thanks. If you are part of the Anglers Club, what's coming up this month? So we're going to cover, last month was so well received as far as the migration. We're going to continue that. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with spawn. I'm going to show you some of my favorite spawning areas to fish on the Detroit River. Then we're going to talk about how fish disperse post-spawn, how they act differently and move a little bit different in the river post-spawn, and how they disperse out of the river after they do spawn. So we're going to kind of continue where we picked up. That'll be next Tuesday. I'm going to try to stay around a half hour. Last month went about 40 minutes. So kind of stay in that 30-40 minute range. But we're going to talk about post-spawn areas, post-spawn dispersal, and changes in attitude, and then actual post-spawn dispersion out of the river next week. And then the week after that, we're going to talk about different presentation options, because once those fish get done spawning and they get to certain parts of the river and they start to act a certain way, being vertical is not always the best way to catch them. So we're going to talk about that in 2 weeks. And then, in 3 weeks, we will have our live Q&A. Now, that's all on the Teaching Fishing Anglers Club. You have to be a member of that club to get all that information. It's kind of stuff that we give every month to our guys who've made a decision to be part of our group and dig into hardcore stuff. So that's the kind of stuff that we do every month for them. We do a full-blown seminar on the second Tuesday of the month. And if you're not a member of the club, here's where you can join. We do a full-blown seminar the second Tuesday of the month, a little deeper dig into one of the topics we covered in that seminar on the third Tuesday of the month. And the fourth Tuesday of the month, we have a live Q&A to talk about that subject. So that's pretty cool. I don't know if you saw it, but on this Facebook page, I hope you saw it, we're doing a full-day Detroit River seminar. I don't know if we put a date on it yet. I think it's coming up next week. So we are offering, you Teaching Fishing Anglers Club guys got a gift last month. You got the Lower Detroit River Where To DVD. You got to watch that for free. And remember, we're offering the waypoint file. If you want that waypoint file, send us an email, teachingfishing@gmail.com. Tell us what unit you have, and we will send you the it's $3.99 instead of $14.99. We'll send you the waypoint file. So, and that's all the waypoints we talk about in the DVD, plus a whole bunch more. So this month, we're doing I think on Saturday and Sunday this coming week, we're releasing 3 seminars. Lower Detroit River, Where to Fish, which is, and Upper Detroit River, Where to Fish. So what these are is I go through my 25 favorite spots on the Upper River, Wyandotte North, and the Lower River, Wyandotte South. I show you those spots on a map. I show them to you on a fishing hotspots map, on a GPS. We show you landmark photos. And then I talk about each spot. When's the best time to fish it? How deep? Is it big fish or small fish? What's the best depth to fish it? Where the actual best drifting passes are. We break down each piece in detail. And on each of those DVDs, Upper River and Lower River, is a waypoint file that you can actually put in your machine, have a waypoint for each one of the places that we talk about, plus a bunch of fishing waypoints that are actually the runs you want to make. So those 2 seminars, plus we do the side scan, down scan interpretation seminar. Because side scan is huge to catching more fish on the Detroit River or anytime you're fishing in current. So we're putting those 3 seminars together for you to watch. I think it's $30, and you get the waypoint files. I think it's $30 for non-members, $20 if you're a member of the Teaching Fishing Anglers Club. You get all of that stuff. So pretty cool. So if you're not a part of the Teaching Fishing Anglers Club, sign up now. There's going to be some other cool stuff coming later in the year. For you guys who have asked, we have some trolling boot camp dates set up. We're going to hop on the pontoon, spend 3 hours on the water. We teach you physically how to do everything, how to run lead cords, set boards, take boards off, run inline weights, 1 snap weights, tune a crankbait, set out a spread, use a precision trolling app to get everything right, take boards on and off, send a board to the outside and be able to bring around the other boards, calibrate line counter reels, how to run jet divers, disc divers, tadpoles. We teach you all of that hands-on the pontoon. I think we've got 6 dates set for that in 2021. So we'll have some of that. And we are working on getting dates set for Butt in the Boat, where you either come on our boat and we show you how sonar should all work, or we actually get on your boat, get your sonar dialed in, and get your best performance from the sonar. That's called Butt in the Boat. Those dates are coming soon. Lots of stuff happening. I've got a lot of work to do because once April gets here, I'm gone. So I've got to finish content today for March and April, and then work on May content the next couple of days. I got a lot to get done, so I got to go. Have a great morning, guys. Thanks for joining us. We had a huge number today. Always fun to talk fishing with you guys. Appreciate everything you do. Just remember, go out there and represent what we do with kindness and integrity. Appreciate you guys. Have a great week. We'll see you back here tomorrow night, Tuesday, at